Hi, this is Brian Icenhower. Welcome to the show today. I am really excited both about today's topic and today's guest. They go hand in hand. Who I've got with me today is my friend Scott Wright, who is a partner at Real Trends Consulting. Scott, welcome to the show today.
Thank you, Brian. I'm super happy to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be cool because what we're going to talk about is how real estate brokerage owners can get acquired. How can they get purchased? I mean, the end all goal, like that's the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And Scott is the proverbial leprechaun. I mean, he's going to tell you, he's the gatekeeper, man. He's going to tell you the clues as to how, that a real estate brokerage, what they can do to make themselves acquirable, what they can do to get purchased so that they can actually, sail off into the sunset with a big bag of money. And what that looks like. So I love it. We've had a lot of our clients get purchased and acquired in lots of different ways for lots of different reasons, actually, over the years. And what Scott does, he's worked with us in a lot of ways because what Scott and Real Trends do, Scott's partner, Steve Murray, many of you may know, has been at Real Trends for decades. I know I've grown up with Steve. I mean,
Almost 40 years. I mean, he's going strong still. Yep.
Yeah, he's one of the few guys that has me beat. I've been in it for like 34. So I remember, listening and reading Steve's newsletters in the 80s to give you an idea before the interwebs, before the information superhighway.
Oh, yeah.
Steve was driving off road.
That's true.
And so Scott and Steve have been partners for years as well too. And so the way they work with us is they do mergers and acquisitions. So when we get into that deal, these guys are the consultants that help with mergers and acquisitions. They help with valuations. That's a big one too, like how to value a property. Even if you're breaking up, you're breaking up or you're buying out a partner, you need to get your brokerage valued. Or your real estate team valued for that matter. These are the guys that will give you an opinion. They're the guys to go to. Everybody goes to them. I can't tell you how many people we've sent to Scott and Steve over the years. It's phenomenal. And they provide, along the same vein, they provide expert witness testimony for the same reasons. People break up, husband and wife teams and brokerages break up, companies break up, companies get acquired, they get split up, they get liquidated, you name it, or they're happily putting things together, when they got to put things together and put deals together and they're going to merge or they're going to acquire, they're going to purchase with all the excitement in the world about moving forward in a profitable manner. These are the guys that they call. So that's what they do. That's why I'm so happy to have him here today, because he's going to tell us what we can do so that we're not just running our brokerages or our real estate teams. We're actually, putting ourselves in a position so that we have the opportunity to possibly be acquired if we so desire to someday. So Scott, that's enough of me. They're all used to hearing me. What can they do? What can these sellers do?
Well, first of all, thanks, Brian, for the kind words. I really appreciate it. We've done over 4,000 evaluations over the years, and it's solely focused on the residential real estate space. We do brokerages, teams. We've even ventured into a little bit into agent book of businesses. Usually when we do that kind of stuff, it's for litigation type purposes. But yeah, this is our specialty. This is what we know and love. We love working with clients of all shapes and sizes. We've represented some of the largest brokerage transactions in this industry over the years. And we also have done, we recently did a transaction where we sold a one office, 10 agent firm, or we'll do valuations for firms that size for various reasons. And like you said, Brian, it's not just M&A that we do valuations. We do business planning for business planning purposes to people to understand where they're at. There's obviously death, divorce, partnership disputes. There's a lot of different reasons why people might want to do their valuations. But this is an interesting industry. We've got broker owners out there who've been doing it for a long time. There's companies that have been in this industry for 60, 70, 100 years, and it's their family business. And it's a legacy type situation where when they're looking at what their firm is doing, it's generating wealth for their family members as they hand it down from one generation to the next. But there's a lot of owners out there who develop these businesses, whether it's backing into it, they were maybe a strong agent or team. They kind of backed into owning a brokerage, and then at some point in time, they're looking to monetize it, or they built this business for the purpose of of monetizing it. They don't have a succession plan. You know, I'm sure you've heard many times, Brian, we're at at a stage in our industry, we've been over the last several years where there's this silver tsunami where we've got a broker owner generation does not have a succession plan. They're looking for an exit strategy, and how do they position their business for a sale? And the market for M&A obviously ebbs and flows depending on what's going on in our industry. You know, the housing market, sometimes when it's really strong, we're going to see very strong price and terms for brokerage transactions and team transactions. And when we have, headwinds in place, there might not be as strong of a desire to make acquisitions, but there's still a market for it. We're seeing M&A happen now, even though we've got in our industry some headwinds that we're looking into with the litigation situation, with the mortgage rates higher, with the state of the housing market. I mean, we've seen we're still down about 36% from our peak in existing home sales, and obviously for a lot of firms that drops to the bottom line. But there's still appetite out there. There's still interest in making acquisitions. It could be on a national scale. There's still some large buyers out there throwing around money in making acquisitions. We're still seeing some regional players making plays in their areas operations. But most of the deals we're seeing get done right now, Brian, are on a local level. Right. We're seeing local brokers acquiring other brokers, local teams acquiring other teams, an agent book of businesses, and so there's always going to be a market for it, regardless of the state of the industry. And what we tell folks, to kind of circle around to answer your question, is how do you position yourself for a sale? And really, I hate to simplify it, but when you are selling your firm, the purchaser cares about several things, but they also care about making this an acquisition that is accretive for them, that is something that's going to make money for them, that's going to provide cash flow and pay off the acquisition price over a short period of time. So really what you want to do is make sure, okay, what have I built? What is my profitability? We'd like to look back several years to kind of see where you've been to where you are today. But this industry is a what have you done for me lately industry. And most purchasers will take a hyper focus on the most recent 12 months. We've gone through a period of time once the market kind of turned in 2022 through the end of 23, where we've been telling a lot of our clients, okay, now is the time to make sure you cut your expenses for a number of reasons. Number one, you shouldn't be spending money where you don't need to be spending. But number two, as you create a lean operating expense environment, that's how you're going to be able to add more to your bottom line. When you add more to your bottom line, you're going to be able to increase the value of your company. So we've gone through a period of time where, okay, let's cut expenses where we should cut expenses. Are we spending money where we don't need to be spending money? We tell our clients, Brian, you should make it an annual practice, whether you're considering a sale or not, to sit down if you're large enough to have your own controller or CPA, whatever, go down your general, your GL and look and see, do we need to be spending money? And it could be just little stuff. I mean, scrub. Yeah. Scrubs, scrub that GL. Steve and I went through that exercise a few years ago, and we realized that we were paying 2 people for water services and one of them we didn't even use. And stuff that we didn't notice. It's little stuff, but it adds up. So scrub that GL.
I think that's a good annual practice. I like to do that in the winter when things are slower. So like every December or January, it's always like, okay, how can we get our budget down 5%? Like that's the goal. Like, let's get down 5%. Every year, get it down 5% because it creeps back up with stupid stuff. You know what I mean? I even know some agents, what they'll do. Listen to this little trick. Here's a quick, easy way to do it. Cancel your business credit card or no, report it like stolen or lost or something. And all of a sudden you get a new one. And all of a sudden, all these people will say, hey, please resubscribe. And you start to see, hey, I don't need that. I didn't need that. I didn't need that. You get all these emails. And all of a sudden you start to see, I don't even know what that was for. You know what I mean? But all you have to do is not all of a sudden it's very easy to cancel a lot of those subscriptions. You have a hard time canceling because you've got a new card and they can't bill it anymore. So kind of an interesting little trick for people who are looking to, that aren't as organized and don't have all their expenses lined out on a ledger.
I need to do that myself. I love that. I mean,
you want to do that?
I'll look at my own, I mean, for my own personal life, right? I mean, I've got kids who subscribe to certain apps and have these recurring expenses, and they show up on my credit card. I'm like, what is this?
Yeah, totally.
All these streaming services. That's a good idea. I love it.
Yeah, no kidding. Parental controls are impossible to maintain. I'm with you on that
one. Yeah, so I mean, to your point, Brian, that's so critical for every business in any industry, and in our industry, when margins continue to be compressed on the top line, that's other than continuing to recruit and to grow your agent count, and also to develop your agents to be more productive. The biggest control we have is on our own operating side, our own expenses, and to cut expenses, to become a lean, mean operating machine. Because, we're not in the days, 20, 30 years ago where you're keeping, as a broker, you're keeping 30 cents on the dollar. We have a benchmark database that we keep, and the average in the nation now is under 15%. It's about 13% retained company dollar on a national average. Obviously, depending on your model, your market, whether you're high end, low end, depending on what part of the city you're in, you're going to have numbers that are different. But as we see that compression, it's so important to manage below the line on your operating expenses to make sure not only you increase your profitability as you run your own business, and the higher your profits, the more money you're going to make personally, but also to position yourself for that sale. And in doing that, it's really important to make sure that you have got clean data and that you're organized. We see more transactions get blown up because you've got what we call dirty data. When a purchaser requests information for their own due diligence and you can't provide it to them, or it's just so messy, or they can't understand what's going on, it's handwritten or whatever, or it's just incomplete. So in the process of going through that GL and the process of positioning yourself, make sure that your data is clean, make sure it's organized and easily presentable, not only on your financials, but agent productivity. Make sure you know where your leases are. Make sure you know where your vendor contracts are. Make sure you just are positioned, you have really clean
commission structures, different commission structures for your different agents. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. That's super important. And that's information that purchasers really like to dive into. They want to understand what the agent productivity has been over certain periods of time. Some purchasers actually want to drill down to understand how old your agents are, where they're at in their careers. If you've got a firm that's got 50 agents and 40 of them are 80 years old or older, then the value may not be there for that firm. Whereas if you've got 40 agents who are under 50, so that's kind of stuff that people look at. So just keep organized, keep clean data, make sure you operate lean, and really hyper focus on that trailing 12 months.
Yeah, I love that. I want to back up a minute here because I think I assumed something, because you even talked about like this 13% retained company dollar national average, which I think it's important, because when you're getting acquired, they're not acquiring your agent count. They're not acquiring you. They really are looking for your profitability. They want to see that you can make money. So the fact that you can show us your expenses, the fact that you can show us your revenue and where it comes from is very important, because that's how they determine how much money they're going to pay you for your company, right? So this is where I think we probably are remiss if we don't talk about how we value a real estate brokerage. Like, what are the common ways that we value how much someone would pay for your brokerage?
Exactly right. Yep. That's exactly right, Brian. It's all about, if you're a purchaser, is this going to make me money? And as a seller, what kind of profitability can I show them? Now, obviously, there's going to be certain premiums that might be involved if there's incredible synergies. If you've got two 10-office competing 10-office brokerage firms that are competing in the same markets, and there are immediate synergies in terms of combining offices, combining back office or employee positions, and then there could be premiums to that. But really, when it comes down to it, it's the bottom line. What's that bottom line EBITDA? We call it adjusted EBITDA, and that's after we, look at the cash flow and make the proper adjustments. And
let's tell them what EBITDA is too. Let's just assume.
You betcha. So EBITDA stands for earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. So obviously we're going to add back, if you run any of that through your income statement or P&L, we add back the taxes, amortization, depreciation, interest. But we add back, we make appropriate adjustments as well for anything that you might have done over the last 12 months that could change something on a go-forward basis. So let me give you an example, Brian, of some of the more common adjustments to the bottom line as you're positioning yourself to come up with that final value. Number one, if there's any non-recurring or one-time expenses, if you, for example, remodeled your office or redeveloped your website, those kind of expenses that you might be running through the company are one-time, they're non-recurring, you could add those back. So those boost the bottom line. If you close an office, in like 6 months ago, you get credit for the entire year. So you could take off the 6 months of the lease payment that was paid. So those are adjustments that you can make. If you terminate an employee position and you don't plan on rehiring that position, you can adjust for personnel expenses. One of the biggest adjustments, though, that's super important is making sure we understand the owner's contribution to the company. And this is especially important for the smaller firms out there, whether it's a small brokerage firm or teams. What kind of expenses are owners running through their company? Are they running through? And listen, you and I both own small businesses, and we have the right to make sure we position our companies well from a tax perspective. And so there could be expenses we run through that are not related to the business, whether it's personal, discretionary, something that a new owner wouldn't pay for. We could add all that back. We need to make sure we normalize compensation for how owners are paying themselves. If they're non-producing owners, then are they paying themselves a salary that's commensurate to market rates? Here's a big adjustment. If they're producing owners, we see a lot of smaller brokerage firms where the owners still list and sell. Are the owners taking a split that's a market level split? A split that's commensurate to what they're paying their top non-owner agents? Are they leaving all their commissions in the company, which artificially inflates the bottom line cash flow? So what is that owner production contributing to the bottom line? If the owner production, even if they're on a normal split, is 50, 60, 70% of profitability, then there's a lot more risk involved there for a purchaser. Could still be interesting to somebody.
Could be buying vapor. I mean, you buy this brokerage, and all of a sudden the owner wants out. That's why they're selling it, and 60% of the production is somehow tied to the owner or the owner's team or something. And now you got nothing. That's a big one too. I see that one a lot.
Oh yeah. So once you make all those adjustments, Brian, circling back around to your original question, you've got this bottom line adjusted EBITDA number. Some people call it net operating cash flow, net income, profitability, whatever. In this industry, it's very simple. It's just a multiple of that number. And that multiple of that number, it determines what the value is. And that the multiples could range anywhere between 1.5 to 4.5 for really large firms out there. Multiples ebb and flow based on the state of the market, and they can also change depending on what the terms of a transaction are, right? If you're a seller and you're willing to, I don't need that much money up front, I'm okay taking it over a longer period of time, you could possibly get a higher purchase price. If you're a seller, like you said, who's looking to sail off into the sunset, who doesn't really want to be involved, who wants more cash up front, that's a lot more risk for a purchaser. So they may drive down that price, overall price, in order to give you a little bit more up front. So it's, in the deal world, we call it my price, your terms, my price. So price and terms can really affect what that overall value is. I will tell you, and this is really important in this day and age, Brian, not all brokerage firms are profitable at this point in time. Right. We've had over, second half of 22 through 23 through to today, a big chunk of the valuations we're doing, the firms have not been profitable over the last 12 months. But just because you're not profitable does not mean there's not value. And we'll take a different valuation approach for those firms that don't necessarily have a black number at the bottom line of their income statement over the last 12 months. And that's when we kind of have to look at the top line. And we value them according to a percentage of their company dollar or a percentage of their gross margin. So there's still going to be value there. If you've got agents that are producing, there's going to be an element of value. Obviously, a purchaser needs to figure out how they can make this acquisition accretive based on what kind of expenses they think they can continue to cut and what the agents can continue to do under their own platform and their own leadership. But there's always going to be value, even if there's loss in the bottom line over the 12 months.
I love it. And I'll take, just for conversation purposes, I'll take the middle range on the 1.5 multiplier to the 4.5, and I'm going to use the old industry adage, which should never be done, of 3-year multiple. And because of all the reasons you just said are actually why you don't want to just assign your own 3-year damage, where you want to get an independent valuation from Real Trends on this, because there's definitely different considerations for different companies, and you just listed a few of them. But if we use a 3-year EBITDA or a 3-year net income, whatever the language is you want to use there, that's a rough way to value your company. I mean, you look at how much net income you have, so we got to know your expenses, right? And we got to know how much you're bringing in, and hopefully it's not all coming from the owner like we talked about. And all of a sudden, what we're left with is 1 year. You multiply that times, let's say, the 3-year example. That is a reasonable number, a reasonable term as to what you might sell for. So if that doesn't give you motivation to keep your expenses down and keep your foot on the gas, increasing production and agent count to drive revenue up, that's how it happens. That's why you see a lot of these guys growing and consistently trying to grow through this. So I want to make sure everybody understands that, because a lot of my audience is used to me like trying to kind of push them on growth. And that is a wonderful, wonderful way to motivate me, at least, to push growth, right?
Oh my gosh, yes. I want to amplify what you're saying. And it really is that simple, Brian. So let's say you're making your bottom line cash flow is $200,000 a year. If we put a 3 multiple on that, your value is $600,000. I mean, it's as simple as that. And to your point, okay, how do I get that value higher than $600,000? Well, let's grow that bottom line. In this day and age, and what we tell people, if you want to increase your value, okay, I'm not ready to sell for that amount. Growth in scale is one of the fastest ways to do that, right? Whether it's either making acquisitions yourself or really diving into recruiting and developing your agents, growing their productivity of your existing agents, or whether it's hiring a recruiter or maybe having a higher focus on recruiting. There's other ways, obviously, to continue to add to that bottom line that we always tell a lot of clients, whether it's, hey, if you're at a large enough scale, have you thought about affiliated services type? Have you thought about looking into title? Have you thought about looking into, property casualty insurance, mortgage, whether it's an MSA or signing some kind of a JV? There's other ways to do that. Have you thought about, maybe indexing your independent contractor agreements to the CPI, so you don't have to be, as the owner of the brokerage firm, so you don't have to be the one that suffers as prices continue to rise on what you're doing. So there's other ways to grow that value too. But yeah, it's as simple as multiplying that bottom line to get a general idea of what you're worth, and then figuring out, okay, here's where I think I'm at today. How do I get to where I want to be, either at some point in the future or where I want to be when I want to sell?
I know what I wanted to say, and that you just got me right back on it. When we look back at those years, like, it's kind of been, what we're talking right now, it's been kind of a weird, last few years, as you had mentioned earlier. I mean,
oh yeah,
you can look at, like, first of all, don't get excited that your company's worth 2021's, EBITDA times 3. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of an anomaly year. Acquirers know that, right? And similarly, they're not going to look at your 2023 and think that's who you are either, because that's kind of a negative year for a lot of companies, right? So, they do have eyes and ears, and they do realize, so they may look at other years, or they may use different valuation methods to get a valuation in years when it's tough to get an accurate reading, like Scott has said as well too. But oftentimes they'll skip 2021. A lot of acquisition companies, I know, like when Compass was looking around and acquiring a lot, they would skip 2021. They wanted to look at 2020 and 2019. I'm not going to look at that one. That was kind of crazy. We all got really rich that year type of deal. And so they'll look outside of that. And similarly, they'll look outside of really bad years where everybody kind of took it in the shorts as well too. So I think that that's very, very important. Tell me this, Scott. I think there's a couple ways to look at this. A lot of these brokerage owners actually open other core services around them, right? Where they have these affiliate partnerships with or open up other, adjacent affiliate companies like mortgage companies, title companies, property management companies, insurance companies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they own those as well too to capitalize on more income. How does that impact? How does that impact the valuation?
It can substantially impact the valuation because a lot of purchasers will give very similar or the same multiples to those other revenue streams. We see, believe it or not, depending on what part of the country you're in and how large you are and what the rules and regulations are around, are you attorney state, not attorney state, we see firms where their value from their affiliated services income is actually higher than their brokerage. And they actually not only are okay with that, that's their plan. They want to leverage their volume from their brokerage operations to feed these other revenue sources, to feed their title business, to feed their mortgage business, to feed their property management business. If you're in California, feeding your escrow business could be a big way to make money. So there's companies out there that their value is higher in those core services or those affiliated services than it is in their brokerage, and they're absolutely okay with that. And that makes them more valuable too, because they're not living and dying by the ebb and flow of existing home sales, or they're more immune to margin compression. Okay, as they're keeping less from the agent, which is just the trend in the recent years. Unfortunately, their splits may have to continue to go higher, or their fees may go lower in order to compete in whatever the market they're in. But that revenue source from that other stream is still there, and it's still going to thrive, and it's going to be marginally higher than their brokerage as their margins compress. So it's a really good way as you build scale to, adding different sources of revenue is always something we recommend to our brokerage clients.
I love that. Okay, so that's good. I appreciate that. The other thing I would like to hear, this is kind of an interesting one. Like, it seems to me over the years, I just want to have a discussion about this thing, I guess. And I'm going to keep you a little bit longer here because I love this conversation. I like talking to Scott too. It's
same. Love it.
My feeling is, and you're closer to this than I am without a doubt, is that the companies that get acquired are the ones that generally have commission structures that aren't as, I don't know if this is the right word, competitive as those that are like got everybody on 90-10 splits that cap out at $10,000 a year, because that's less likely to be a profitable company that's that competitive, that has really, really high agent splits. The companies that get acquired are the ones that show value through their name or their reputation or what have you, whatever way they show value, that have agents on more traditional splits like 80-20s that don't cap, or 70-30s or things like that. It seems like those, because those are going to be more likely to be profitable, and somehow that brokerage is evidencing its value to its agents somehow by its very existence to be able to retain agents at those commission structures. Somehow that broker's more valuable. Somehow that name's more valuable. Lots of different ways it could be, of course. What do you think about that? That's my personal assessment. I don't know if I'm right.
That's, it depends. It depends on, and we see that more, to your point, on a local level. When it comes to reputation, when it comes to your standing in that market, your market share, your competitor might be willing to pay a premium in order to snatch that. And we talk about culture too. We want to make sure when you're making acquisitions, there's a couple things that need to fit like a puzzle in order for an acquisition to work. Number one, you need to be aligned culturally. Number two, to your point, you don't want to be too far apart in your commission splits. And one rule of thumb we tell people is, try and stay within about 5% retained company dollar of whoever you're trying to acquire, because if it's much different than that, if it's higher than that, right, you're barking up the wrong tree. If your agent splits are that different, you shouldn't be if you're a traditional uncapped graduated commission plan company, you should not be acquiring probably a company, unless you're going to keep them as a different brand in a different market. You shouldn't be acquiring a company that's flat fee or transaction fee based, right, or even a low cap company. Those just don't fit very well. So, the acquisitions that are going to work are companies that have a very similar commission structure, very similar commission model to the other. And then to your point, Yeah, companies that are more traditional in a sense, their profits can be higher on a smaller scale. So, company that might only be doing, for example, 500 transactions a year. If they're on a more graduated commission split plan, they're uncapped. The broker is keeping more, but keep in mind those kind of companies, they also tend to spend more on the services they provide to their agents. They have more brick and mortar. They maybe provide all the marketing for the agents, so their expenses might be a little higher. Whereas a company that for example, maybe is a flat fee company or a transaction fee based company, their margins are very thin, and they need to go well beyond 500 transactions a year to make any money. Those smaller flat fee model companies, they need to have scale quickly or they aren't going to survive.
Right.
That's why you see these flat fee companies having to really aggressively grow their agent base, offer their agents a lot to get to that point where, yeah, I'm only keeping 5-6% of every dollar that's earned, but I've all of a sudden grown to where I have now 1,000 agents, 1,500 agents, and whether it's the monthly fees they're making from them or the transaction fees or whatever. Scale is so important for those low fee model businesses in order to make sure you have that profitability. And you just aren't going to see traditional companies purchase those type of companies. But yeah, it depends on the market. For example, in the Northeast of the United States, agents there for some reason just demand a lot more services, and that's on whatever model, whatever brand you have.
They do. Yeah, they want marketing materials. They want everything. Yeah.
Yeah, they do, and they want their office space. They want their marketing paid for. And that's fine. And brokers up there understand that, but also their splits are going to be a lot lower, right? They're not going to be the same as they are in Southern California. In fact, we separate our benchmark based on certain regions of the country. The average splits in the Northeast of the United States is a good 6 points higher than it is in Southern California. And that's just kind of based on what the regional demands are and on what agent expectations are. I mean, the West Coast in the South is super, for some reason, it's an area, it's a part of the country that's super competitive, where you're just going to have, higher splits. There's a lot more competition on the flat fee. There's a lot more flat fee companies out there that are really driving those splits down for the traditional companies that are unfortunately a dying breed.
Lot more reliance on affiliated services too, like for income.
Oh gosh, yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah.
But to your point, Brian, brand is super important. Reputation is super important. Culture is super important. If you are going to position yourself to be attractive as a seller, you need to have all that. You need to have strong leadership, strong culture, strong brand, and that's listen. That brand could be you could be a strong Remax brand, a strong Coldwell Banker brand, a strong Keller brand, a strong independent brand. Whatever. You need to make sure that whatever brand you build within your company and your market is something that's got a good, strong reputation. You've got low agent turnover, and obviously you hope that translates to the bottom line, which is how you're going to get paid in an acquisition.
Yeah, and I think I want to flesh that out a little bit too. And here's what Scott means when he says, "Hey, I'm." When you're merging, when someone's thinking about acquiring or merging a company into theirs, if your commission structure is one that is a real high split, let's say you've got all the agents on 95.5s and they cap at $10,000 or something, it's very hard, number one, for you to show profit to get paid, unless you're scaled like you, which means you have lots of agent counts. You have a very big number of agents. But when you get acquired like that, now, the company that's acquiring you, all of their existing agents are going to want that amazing deal. And you're going to, then you're just going to cannibalize the profit of your existing company by acquiring them. However, if the company you're acquiring maybe has, 80-20 splits or 85-15s with no caps. Let's go the other way with it. You actually, when you acquire them, you might be able to give the agents a little bit better deal by coming to your company. So all the agents get excited that they are being acquired, that we are joining this new brand, and so they don't leave during this acquisition, because agent retention through a merger or an acquisition can be a dicey thing. That gives agents a chance all of a sudden to look at the other options too. Since they're forcibly being moved to this new brand, they might think, hey, I can look myself. So making sure that's a smooth transition from a compensation structure method is something that acquirers take a pretty good look at there. And so if you can maintain value and keep compensation structures profitable, you become much more acquirable and desirable for reasons other than just the profit.
You're absolutely right. I couldn't have said it any better. You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, that's so. I love this conversation. I wish we could just keep doing it because it's one of my favorite conversations to have. So, and Scott, you are the man to have it with. That's for dang sure. So
I appreciate that, Brian.
and I really appreciate it. I love to continue working with you over the years as well too. Thank you for taking the time today, Scott, to share all this knowledge with all these folks. I really appreciate it, man.
My pleasure. And if anybody has any questions or wants to talk about it with me, just feel free to give me a call. We've told this at our conferences, Brian. We were at the gathering recently. The first hour is always free with us. So if you ever want to just talk, and kind of flesh things out, figure out where you're at, Steve and I are always happy to chat and spend some time with you to figure out if there's any way we could help you.
Boy, that is really true too. These guys will give you an hour free if this is something that's a goal of yours. Talk to these people proactively. You know what I mean? Have a conversation with them beforehand. So you know what you're doing, and increase the likelihood that it does happen to you too. So and how can they find you?
Yeah, so you can email myself or Steve at either swright@realtrends.com or smurray@realtrends.com. Our website is rtcvaluations.com. That's RTC Real Trends Consulting Valuations.com. And you can find us on LinkedIn. I'm the young guy, but I'm almost 50, so we aren't as good on social media. But there's a lot of ways to find us. Our phone number is 303-741-1000.
Awesome. Scott, thank you so much. Time for you guys. Everyone, please reach out and give these guys a hand, and reach out to them for their services as well too. They've been helping us out for decades now. So
thank you, Brian. And I must say, any of our clients that we interact with that have worked with you and your team, next level. They're very pleased with where they are, and it's we could usually tell the quality of companies, the quality of their staff, the quality of their financials when they come from your group. So we always appreciate working with folks from your team.
Well, thank you, sir. I love our people too. That's mi familia. So I love it. Well, thank you, sir. Have a good one, and everybody else, can't wait to see you on the next show. Thanks again.
Thank you.